There was a time in England when the poor sometimes bartered flesh for bread, and a girl's future could hinge on a man's purse. In a crowded square, bids rose like smoke, until a stranger's impossible offer silenced the town. He thought he had claimed a beauty for pride's sake. By nightfall, he would learn he had bought a brother's courage, and set his own heart at risk. The sun beat down on the cobbled square of Market Drayton, glinting off the Duke of Whitcomb's silver buttons and the fine kid gloves he wore to protect his hands from the plebeian dust. He stood apart from the jostling throng, a silhouette of quiet power. His name was a secret he guarded fiercely. Here, he was merely a man of means passing through on his way to his country estate. His eye had been caught, not by a prize pig or a well-turned carriage, but by a figure on the makeshift stage. A girl, so veiled and shrouded she was more shadow than substance. The auctioneer called her the fairest maid in the Shire, and the crowd murmured in agreement, though no one could truly see her face. The Duke had no need for such a spectacle, nor did he crave a village trinket, but the whispers of the men around him, crude and dismissive, stirred a deep, unbidden pride. They spoke of her as if she were a horse for stud, and a wave of cool fury settled over him. He would not allow such a thing to pass. He raised his hand, not with a bid, but with a challenge. Firm, commanding. £100. The bidding stopped. A hush fell. The sum was obscene for a village girl, more than a farmer would see in a lifetime. A breathless silence followed. A man in the front, a burly industrialist named Edgar Pike, scowled and lowered his hand. The girl on the stage swayed slightly, her head bowed. The auctioneer stammered, then declared the sale final. The Duke strode forward, his pace measured, his expression unreadable. He offered the money, a small fortune in crisp notes, to the girl's parents, who stood beside the stage, wringing their hands. They were plain folk, their faces etched with worry and relief. They took the money, their eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. The Duke then gestured for the veiled figure to come with him. He offered his arm, and the figure took it, their touch surprisingly firm. A sudden, fleeting memory of his father's hand, broad and calloused, crossed the Duke's mind. A flicker of oddity he dismissed. The figure walked with a strange, confident stride, not the demure shuffle of a frightened girl. As they reached his waiting carriage, the Duke saw her father press a small, worn satchel into the figure's hand. The father's eyes, full of unshed tears, met the Duke's.
"She is a good girl, sir. Please, be kind."
The Duke nodded, a silent promise. The carriage pulled up to a small private inn at dusk, as planned. The Duke's valet opened the door. The Duke stepped out, then turned to the veiled figure.
Cold, commanding. Follow me.
Inside the inn, the figure's hand brushed against his as he gestured toward a private room. The contact was brief, but it was enough. The hand was not the delicate, slender hand of a young woman, but a man's, strong and capable. The Duke's mind raced. He had been duped. He had bought a boy. By the carriage he had noticed the wrongness. Broad knuckles and a man's stride. And now, in the light of the inn, the truth was undeniable. He turned to the figure, his voice dangerously low.
Take off the veil.
The Duke's command hung in the air, a cool blade of authority. The veiled figure stood still, and slowly, reluctantly, reached for the pins at the back of his head. The veil came away, followed by a dark wig, revealing a face surprisingly soft-featured and clean-shaven, framed by short, cropped hair. It was a boy's face, a young man's, not a woman's at all. The Duke felt the last of his anger dissipate, replaced by a strange sense of awe. This was not a con artist. This was an act of pure desperation and selflessness. The boy did not flinch under the Duke's gaze, but met it squarely, his own eyes defiant, yet pleading.
My lord, I ask only for my sister's safety. She knows nothing of this.
The Duke's eyes narrowed. You did this to save her?
To spare her the indignity.
The boy lifted his chin.
To spare her a stranger's curiosity. She is innocent. She loves her garden. She has no place in the world you come from.
The Duke studied him. This boy who had bartered his dignity for his sister's freedom.
Where is she?
They stopped before a small cottage. The boy, without knocking, lifted the latch. He entered first, then stepped aside protectively. The Duke stood in the doorway, his breath catching in his chest. In the dim light of a small, cluttered scullery, a girl stood at a work table, her back to them. She turned at the sound of the door closing, her eyes a calm and quiet hazel, meeting his.
Miss, I beg your pardon.
The boy stepped forward, placing a hand gently on his sister's arm.
My lord, I beg you, treat her kindly. This was my doing.
The girl's eyes widened in understanding, and a look of profound sadness crossed her face. The Duke took a breath, letting the moment hang.
Your courage does you credit. Miss, may I know your name?
She looked up at him again, her eyes steady.
Anna.
The Duke inclined his head.
Miss Anna.
He looked at her, then at the cluttered room, at the worn clothes, at the brave young man who had risked everything to save her.
Anna, I am the Duke of Whitcomb. Your brother's courage has bound me to a debt I must repay. I will not leave you here to face the consequences of my foolishness. Come to Whitcomb Hall. I will ensure your safety and your brother's employment. No one will ever know of the sale. I will make a quiet place for you. A gardener's assistant, a librarian's charge. You will be my guest, not my property. The choice is yours. There is a carriage waiting, and I can have a carriage sent for your parents to join you. You will be safe.
He waited, his heart suddenly pounding. The girl looked at her brother, then back at him, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Her brother nodded, a silent command for her to accept.
We will come.
The Duke glanced back once at her, at the smudge on her wrist and the rosemary scent on the air, and a feeling of quiet purpose settled over him.
Come to Whitcomb Hall.
The journey to Whitcomb Hall was a quiet one. Anna sat opposite the Duke, her brother Thomas seated beside her. The Duke had insisted on a second carriage for her parents, explaining that they were being taken to Bath, a white lie to ensure their immediate departure from the village. In the stillness of the carriage, Anna's gaze would drift to the Duke's hands, resting on his knee. A stark contrast to the rough, calloused hands of the men she knew, yet there was a strength in them that was strangely reassuring. He met her gaze once, and a silent, almost imperceptible acknowledgement passed between them. He had seen her truth, and she had seen his unexpected kindness. They arrived at the Duke's country seat at dusk. Whitcomb Hall was a sprawling stone manor, its windows glowing like warm eyes in the fading light. Servants, dressed in quiet livery, moved with a dignified purpose. The Duke introduced Anna to his housekeeper, Mrs. Harrow, a woman with a face carved from stone and eyes that missed nothing.
Mrs. Harrow, this is Miss Anna. She is to be my guest. Please see that she is made comfortable.
Mrs. Harrow bowed stiffly, her lips a thin, disapproving line. She cast a sharp, assessing look at Anna, her gaze lingering on the smudges on her wrist. The Duke then turned to Thomas.
Thomas, you'll be my personal valet. My last man retired. Consider this a temporary posting until we find a place for your talents.
The lie was as smooth as silk. Thomas's gratitude was a silent, deep bow. The Duke had saved them, not just from the market, but from a life of destitution. Later that afternoon, he sent for Thomas. He wanted to understand the full story. He found him in the boot room, polishing a riding boot to a high gleam. The Duke leaned against the doorway, his arms crossed.
Thomas, tell me what happened. The truth. All of it.
Thomas looked up, his face etched with a mix of shame and gratitude. He told the Duke of his father's debts, the leaking roof, and the terrible, final conversation where his parents, with no other choice, had decided to sell Anna. He confessed to lying about his departure to Bath, leaving before dawn and doubling back, so his parents would believe they had a deal and be long gone by the time the truth was revealed. The Duke listened, his expression unreadable, and when Thomas finished, he simply nodded.
Your courage is a rare thing, Thomas. I'll not forget it.
One evening, he was returning from a long ride and saw Mrs. Harrow standing by the kitchen door, watching Anna. Her face was a study in cold displeasure. As Anna smiled and moved away, the housekeeper's gaze hardened. The Duke heard a soft, venomous whisper.
Not in my house.
Life at Whitcomb Hall continued in its quiet, measured rhythm. The Duke, with a newfound purpose, moved through his days with an almost visible lightness. He found himself spending less time on ledgers and more in the gardens, a book in hand, ostensibly reading, but in truth, watching Anna. She had, in just a few weeks, become the soul of the place. He observed her small, graceful movements as she tended to her plants, the way her hair caught the sunlight, and the subtle shift in her expression when a new seedling sprouted. He saw her speaking with the other gardeners, her quiet voice full of a knowledge that was entirely her own. He had made a home for her, and in doing so, he felt as if he had finally made a home for himself. This peace was a fragile thing, however, a quiet prelude to the noise of the world. A letter arrived from London, heralding a surprise visit from Lady Aurelia Fairchild, a young pedigreed rival from the city, known for her sharp wit and even sharper tongue. The dowager aunt, too, was due to arrive in a few days. The house suddenly buzzed with a frantic energy, the quiet corners now filled with the bustle of servants preparing for the influx of guests. The Duke felt a prickle of unease. He had shielded Anna from the world, but now the world was coming to them. Lady Aurelia arrived with a flurry of silk and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was a woman of striking beauty, and she moved with a practiced grace that was a stark contrast to Anna's simple stillness. She was polite, almost excessively so to Anna, addressing her as a condescending, falsely sweet little gardener, and condescending, falsely sweet, a sweet little thing. Her words laced with a subtle condescension that did not escape the Duke's notice. He saw Mrs. Harrow watching this exchange from the doorway, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. A week into the house party, Anna was in the gardens, gathering sprigs of lavender for a potpourri. She hummed softly, her mind lost in a new story she was writing in her notebook. She had placed her worn leather trug on a small wooden bench. When she returned to it, a small, intricate brooch lay nestled among the lavender stalks. It was a family crest, the Whitcomb lion, a piece she knew belonged to Lady Aurelia.
Anna froze.
She knew instantly this was a trap. The brooch was not a simple accident, it was a plant, a piece of evidence designed to frame her as a thief. Her hands trembled as she looked at it. Then at the manor house. She was not a thief. She would not let this lie fester. With a determined breath, she picked it up and walked directly to the Duke's study, where he was meeting with his legal counsel. She knocked and entered, her face pale but her expression steady. She held out the brooch on her open palm.
My lord, I believe this is Lady Aurelia's. I found it in my trug.
The Duke's face hardened as he saw the small, glinting crest. He knew at once what this meant. He thanked her calmly, his eyes meeting hers in a silent acknowledgement of her courage. He then dismissed his counsel and sent for Lady Aurelia. She arrived with an air of practiced innocence, her eyes flicking nervously between the brooch and Anna. The Duke, without raising his voice, dismantled her flimsy scheme. He had the staff confirm they had not seen Anna near the family jewels. He had Mrs. Harrow, with her grudging admission that she had been watching Anna for weeks, admit she had seen no theft. Lady Aurelia's smile faltered, then vanished entirely. The Duke, a man who never raised his voice, simply dismissed her, his disappointment clear in his silence. He then made an announcement. The house party was over. He had an urgent matter to attend to in London. The guests were to be sent on their way. He would not allow his home or Anna's sanctuary to be poisoned by such malice. As Lady Aurelia departed, defeated, Mrs. Harrow scuttled off, her plans foiled. Later that evening, after the last carriage had rolled away, the Duke found Anna in the gardens, tending to her seedlings. The quiet of the hall had returned. He stood a few feet away, watching her.
Anna, thank you for your honesty.
She looked up at him, her eyes calm and clear.
I have nothing to hide, my lord.
He felt a deep sense of relief, a quiet admiration for her unshakable moral compass. She was a different kind of strength than he had ever known. He was a duke, a man of power and title, yet he had been easily fooled, and she had shown him the way. As they stood in the growing twilight, a footman appeared at the edge of the garden, a look of pure dread on his face. The Dowager Aunt's carriage had just arrived, 2 days ahead of schedule. The Dowager Aunt's carriage was a black, ominous presence against the gentle grey of the twilight. The Duke felt a prickle of annoyance. His aunt was a woman of rigid propriety and sharp judgment. Her unexpected arrival so soon after the departure of the house party was no coincidence. She had, undoubtedly, heard rumours. He composed himself and strode toward the carriage, his face a mask of calm. He had faced down conniving rivals and sharp-tongued socialites. He would not be cowed by his own aunt. He greeted her with a formal kiss on the cheek, his voice a steady hum of welcome. The Dowager Aunt, however, was not to be placated. She looked past him, her eyes sweeping over the hall's facade, as if searching for a flaw.
Nephew, I hope you can explain this unusual quiet. I heard you had a little party, and that it ended in haste.
Her eyes narrowed.
I also heard rumours of a young girl, a nobody, who lives here, with you.
The Duke did not flinch.
I am sure you did, Aunt. People do love to gossip.
He steered her inside, away from the prying eyes of the staff. He had to prepare her for Anna. He would not allow her to be a victim of his aunt's cruelty. He would introduce her as a guest, a ward even, anything to protect her from the Dowager's acid tongue. He saw her glance at Mrs. Harrow, and a silent, knowing look passed between them. The Duke felt a cold wave of certainty. Mrs. Harrow was the source of the rumours. She had been defeated once, and now she was seeking a new ally. He found Anna in the gardens, still among the rosemary and mint. He walked toward her, his mind spinning, but as he saw her serene face, his thoughts stilled. He had to be honest with her. He told her of his aunt's arrival, of the rumours she had heard. Anna listened, her face pale but her eyes steady.
I will go to my room. I do not wish to cause you any trouble.
You have caused me no trouble. You are my guest. You will be my guest at dinner. My aunt will treat you with respect.
His words were a command, not a question. That evening, Anna entered the drawing room, dressed in one of the simple dresses the Duke had provided. She looked like a starched linen sheet next to Lady Aurelia's shimmering silks, but she held her head high. The Dowager Aunt regarded her with an appraising eye.
So this is the girl.
She did not offer her hand. Anna simply curtsied.
I hope you are a good influence on my nephew. He has a reputation to uphold.
Anna did not falter.
I am here only by your nephew's kindness, ma'am.
The Duke stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on Anna's arm.
Anna is a talented gardener, Aunt. She has brought life back to the rose garden.
The lie was as smooth as silk. The Dowager Aunt's eyes flickered from his hand on Anna's arm to his face. Her disapproval a silent accusation. The dinner was a strained affair, a battle of wits and wills. The Dowager Aunt threw pointed questions at Anna, hoping to expose her humble background, but Anna answered them with a quiet dignity that was a formidable shield. Days turned into a week of subtle battles and unspoken tensions. The Dowager Aunt would not let the matter rest. She spent hours in hushed conversations with Mrs. Harrow. The Duke, meanwhile, found his resolve hardening. He had brought Anna into his world, and he would protect her from its malice. One afternoon, a letter arrived for Anna. The handwriting was her mother's, the paper thin and well-worn. Anna took it to a secluded bench in the garden, and the Duke, sensing her need for privacy, walked in the other direction. She read the letter slowly, her expression a mix of relief and longing. Her parents, believing her to be at their distant cousin's house in Bath with Thomas, wrote of their happiness that she was safe and well.
We are so glad to know you are cared for, dearest. The harvest looks promising this year. Write to us soon.
They were warm, loving, and entirely unsuspecting. The letter was filled with simple domestic details, the mending of a roof, the promise of a bountiful harvest, a gentle reminder to send a letter soon. Anna's reply was equally gentle and deceptive.
I am well, Mamma. The gardens here are lovely, and I am treated with kindness.
She wrote of her well-being, her love for the gardens and the kindness of her hosts, a truth wrapped in a lie to protect their peace. The Duke watched her from a distance. The act of writing, of weaving a story to protect those she loved, mirroring his own efforts. He saw her tuck the letter away, a faint smile on her lips, and his heart ached for the lie she was forced to live. He was a man of power, used to ordering his world into submission, but Anna's simple act of grace, her selfless love for her family, touched him in a way that his wealth and title never could. He had bought her brother's courage, but he was learning the true price of that courage was a quiet strength he was only just beginning to understand. His legal team sent a courier with an urgent message. The Duke was needed in London for a pressing legal matter. It was a strategic move, a way to lure him from Whitcomb Hall. The Duke knew he had to go, but who would watch over Anna in his absence? He had no one. He thought of his oldest friend, the one man he knew he could trust with Anna's safety. He wrote a quick letter and sent it by a fleet horseman. The Dowager Aunt's presence at Whitcomb Hall was a subtle and insidious poison. She moved through the house with the silence of a predator, her gaze missing nothing, her questions designed to ensnare and expose. She had quickly ascertained that Anna was not a titled lady, nor a distant relation, and the very mystery of her presence fed her suspicions. The Duke, for his part, remained a quiet, unyielding wall. He introduced Anna as a guest, referred to her as Miss Anna, and treated her with a cool, formal respect that baffled his aunt and Mrs. Harrow alike. This distant, protective behavior only fueled their gossip, as they couldn't understand a duke who would risk his name for a girl he didn't even seem to desire. The Duke's days were now a battle on two fronts: the social war waged by his aunt within the walls of the hall, and the relentless creeping feeling in his heart. The more his aunt tried to expose Anna, the more his own feelings for her grew. He found himself thinking of her constantly. The quiet wisdom in her eyes, the smudge of soil on her wrist, the scent of rosemary that seemed to follow her everywhere. These were the details that held his attention. He was no longer simply a man of honor protecting an innocent girl. He was a man falling in love with a woman of quiet strength. Anna, in her quiet way, noticed everything. She saw the Dowager Aunt's cold stare, and the way the Duke's attention would always, without fail, return to her. The weight of his gaze was a constant presence, a silent pressure that both comforted and terrified her. She knew she could not stay forever. Her presence was a scandal waiting to happen, a slow-burning fuse that would one day explode and destroy the fragile sanctuary she had found. Her heart ached for her parents, the letters a constant reminder of the life they had sacrificed to save her. One evening, after dinner, the Duke found Anna in the library, a small fire crackling in the hearth. The Dowager Aunt had retired for the evening, leaving a rare, precious silence. Anna was standing at a shelf, her finger tracing the spine of a book. The Duke walked to her side, the urge to speak, to confess, a physical ache in his chest. The silence was thick with the weight of unvoiced feelings.
Anna, I did a foolish thing at the market. I acted out of pride, and it brought you into this.
He paused, searching for the right words.
But I do not regret it, because if I had not, I would not have known your brother's courage, and I would not have known you. You have brought a light to this house. You have a quiet strength I have never seen before. I am no longer simply protecting you. I admire you more than I can say."
His confession was soft, almost a whisper, but it landed like a stone in the quiet air. Anna's body went rigid. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a sudden, unreadable fear. She had found a sanctuary, a peace she had never known, but she had always known it was temporary. A promise of admiration, a hint of something more, felt like a threat to that fragile peace. To her, it felt like the very beginning of the end of her safety. A single tear tracked a path down her cheek.
"Please, sir, please just let me be. May I keep the garden?"
The plea was not for her freedom, not for a return to her old life, but for the one thing she had found for herself, the one place where she was truly free. The Duke's heart sank. He had misjudged the moment. He had moved too quickly, spoken too soon. Her reaction was not one of blossoming affection, but of profound fear. He had been a protector, a benefactor, but in that moment, she saw him as just another man who wanted something from her, another man who would change her world without her consent. He immediately recoiled, his hand raising in a gesture of apology.
"Forgive me, Anna. I have been selfish. I swear to you I will never do anything to frighten you again. The garden is yours, for as long as you wish it. Please, let me apologize."
His apology was sincere. His eyes filled with a new kind of understanding. He had to earn her trust, not simply demand it. He had to be patient. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of his misstep and her unvoiced fear. He had to leave, to give her space. He stood and walked away, a sense of deep regret settling over him. He had stumbled, and in doing so, he had risked everything. The next morning, the Duke found a small note on his desk, scrawled in Anna's hand. It was a single, trembling word, "Forgiven." But his relief was short-lived. That afternoon, a courier arrived with an urgent message from his solicitor in London. The case was moving forward more quickly than anticipated, and his presence was required immediately. The Duke knew he had to go. He needed to find a man he could trust, a man who would protect Anna with his life. He wrote a quick letter and sent it by a fleet horseman. He would not leave Anna alone. He would not take that risk. He found her in the gardens, just before his carriage was due to depart. He stood at a distance, wanting to say something, but finding the words a heavy burden. Anna looked up, her quiet eyes meeting his. She smiled, a small, fragile thing, but a smile nonetheless. It was a silent forgiveness. The Duke's heart ached with the knowledge that he was leaving her in a house filled with threats. He walked to her, a gesture of respect he had only shown his equals. "Anna, I must leave for London. I will be away for a time. Please, trust the man who comes. He is my oldest friend, and he will ensure your safety." She nodded, her eyes trusting. He looked at her one last time, a farewell in his gaze, before he turned and walked to his carriage. He was leaving his heart behind. But his friend Rowan would be here tomorrow. Rowan arrived the following morning, a man as unpretentious as his name. He was of a similar height to the Duke, but with a broader frame, a man built for the rigors of military life. His dark hair was a contrast to the Duke's auburn locks, but his eyes, a kind, steady hazel, held the same sense of quiet intelligence. He greeted the Duke with a firm handshake and a look of genuine concern.
"I came as soon as I received your letter. What is this pressing matter in London?"
The Duke gave him a clipped, professional summary of the issue. He did not mention the Dowager Aunt, or Mrs. Harrow, or the pamphlets. He did, however, speak of Anna.
"There is a guest at the hall, Rowan. A young woman of simple means. She is an innocent in all this. I have enemies who would use her to strike at me. I trust you and you alone to ensure her safety while I am gone.
Rowan's brow furrowed.
A guest? Is she a distant relation?
No, she is a friend. Her name is Anna. She loves the gardens, and she needs your protection.
He saw the question in Rowan's eyes, but did not elaborate. He trusted Rowan to be discreet and to understand the unstated weight of his request. After the Duke's carriage had rumbled down the long drive, Rowan went in search of Anna. He found her in the glasshouse, tending to a row of delicate orchids. She was bent over a pot, her brow furrowed in concentration. She did not hear him approach. He cleared his throat. Anna started, her head snapping up. She was surprised, but not frightened.
I was told a gentleman would be arriving.
Rowan, I'm here at the Duke's request.
She nodded politely, her manner composed but cool, her hands already returning to her work. There was no blush, no flutter, only a quiet acknowledgement.
Then I thank you for coming. The Duke said you would.
Rowan smiled despite himself. He had met many women in his years of service, women who preened and postured, but Anna was different. She was not trying to be charming. She barely looked at him. Her focus was on the soil in her hands, the fragile life in her care. Weeks passed. The Duke's absence stretched longer than expected, his legal battles in London drawing him deeper into strategy and counsel. In that time, Rowan began to notice the rhythm of Anna's life. He would often find her in the gardens, her hair caught by the wind, her dress dusted with earth, her notebook balanced against her knee as she scribbled some small fable or tale. She rarely spoke beyond courtesy, yet her presence filled the hall in ways no aristocratic guest ever had. Rowan did not speak of it, not even to himself, but he felt it, the quiet pull of admiration. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, steady, self-contained, untouched by vanity. The very things that kept her distant made her unforgettable. The Dowager Aunt and Mrs. Harrow, however, saw opportunity. They noticed Rowan's steady gaze, the way he lingered at the edge of the gardens, and they struck like snakes.
The Duke is risking everything for a nobody. She is not what she seems, a manipulator, quiet but cunning. He is blinded by pride. Surely you see it, Captain Rowan.
They planted seeds of suspicion, hoping to bend Rowan to their purpose. But Rowan listened, his face unreadable. He did not defend Anna, and he did not condemn her. He watched, and what he saw silenced every whisper. Anna's hands stained with soil, her eyes soft with care for the smallest sprout. Her letters home filled with gentle lies meant only to shield her parents from pain. There was no manipulation, no greed. Only a young woman who asked nothing for herself but a garden and a little peace. Rowan understood then that his task was not merely to guard her body, but to guard the fragile trust between her and the Duke. It was not Anna who was in danger of manipulation. It was the Duke's heart. And Rowan swore to himself that when his friend returned, he would find her untouched by slander, as steadfast and unbroken as the day he left her. The Duke's absence settled over Whitcomb Hall like a heavy blanket. The quiet that had once been a source of peace now felt hollow, punctuated by the rustle of the Dowager Aunt's silks and Mrs. Harrow's furtive whispers. Anna felt the change acutely. The house was colder, the tension more pronounced. She missed the quiet, powerful presence of the Duke. He had been a silent guardian, a man of few words, but his very presence had been a shield. Without him, she felt a profound sense of exposure. Rowan, however, was a constant, solid anchor in the storm. He spent his days in the gardens, never far from Anna, a silent, watchful shadow. He did not pry, did not ask questions about the Duke or her past. He simply listened as she spoke of her plants, her voice a quiet murmur. He was a man who understood silence, and their companionship was built on a foundation of unsaid things. He saw her for who she was, a gentle soul with a surprising inner strength, and he admired her for it. His admiration, however, was not the Duke's restless, unspoken hunger, but an open, guileless respect. Anna, however, remained untouched by it. She was courteous, polite, but distant. Her heart was not stirred by Rowan's presence, nor by his quiet smiles. She gave him no encouragement, offered no lingering glances. Her affection, her trust, remained locked away, her sanctuary still the soil beneath her hands. The Duke, meanwhile, was in London, his days a frustrating and tedious round of meetings. The pressing legal matter was proving to be a slow, drawn-out affair. He was in a world of polished lies and sharp-tongued social climbers, and he found himself longing for the honest scent of soil and the quiet truth of a girl who knelt in the dirt. He received a letter from his steward, a brief report that spoke of Rowan's presence in the gardens, of his easy conversation with Anna. The words were simple, but they lit a quiet fire of unease in the Duke's chest. He had brought Rowan in to be a protector, but the thought of his friend earning Anna's trust, of sharing a quiet moment with her, was a sharp and unexpected pain. Back at Whitcomb Hall, Mrs. Harrow watched with a cold, calculating eye. She saw Rowan's steady presence near Anna, and she saw a new way to poison the well. She had already failed to discredit Anna as a thief. Now she would frame her as a duplicitous coquette. She had a plan, a simple but effective one, that would turn the Duke's absence into an opportunity. The forgery was simple. Mrs. Harrow, with her network of spies among the staff, had secured a sheet of Anna's writing paper and a brief note in Anna's careful, looping script. A harmless message to a fellow gardener. She had watched Anna write and knew the way she formed her letters. She was a woman of venomous ambition and a surprising eye for detail. With a steady hand and a malicious glint in her eye, she forged a note in Anna's hand. The note was short, simple, and utterly damning. It was an invitation to Rowan to meet her in the glass house at dusk to discuss a private matter. She paid a young footman to deliver it to Rowan's study, his silence secured with a handful of coins. As dusk began to fall, Anna was in the glass house, the last of the day's sunlight filtering through the panes of glass. She was watering her seedlings, her focus absolute. The air was warm and humid, heavy with the scent of damp earth and growing things. There was rosemary and mint on her hands. She had no idea that a note had been forged in her name, or that her quiet sanctuary was about to become the setting for a malicious lie. Rowan, having received the note, made his way to the glass house. He felt a quiet sense of anticipation. He had grown to admire Anna, and the thought of a private conversation with her, a chance to hear her speak beyond pleasantries, was a welcome relief from the dowager aunt's constant chatter. He pushed open the heavy wooden door, the bell above it jingling softly. Anna looked up, startled. Her expression was one of polite surprise, nothing more.
Rowan, what are you doing here?
He held up the note, a smile on his face.
You invited me. The note said you wished to see me about a private matter.
Her brow furrowed in confusion. The faint colour in her cheeks drained away.
I did not. I have not written a note all day, and the glass house is a public space. There is no private matter to discuss.
She looked from the note in his hand to his face, her eyes filling with a dawning horror. They had both been played. The glass house, her sanctuary, had been violated, turned into a stage for a trap. A cold chill filled the air, replacing the warmth of the evening. But the chill was not from the open door. It was from the sound of pounding hooves on the drive. The Duke had returned. The Duke stood in the fading light, his boots grinding on the gravel, his heart a cold, hard stone in his chest. He saw them clearly now, two figures in the glass house, silhouetted against the last of the sun. He saw the way they stood, a quiet intimacy in their posture, and a wave of raw, possessive jealousy, a feeling he had never known, washed over him. He had trusted Rowan. He had trusted Anna. And now, seeing this, His trust felt like a fool's errand. Every lie the Dowager Aunt and Mrs. Harrow had whispered, every doubt that had gnawed at him in London, rose up to consume him. He wanted to rage, to storm into the glasshouse, to demand an explanation. He felt a deep, profound sense of betrayal. He took one step, then another, his body a tight wire of fury. But as he reached the door, he stopped. He saw the heavy glass, the quiet intimacy of the space. And he remembered Anna. He remembered her honesty with the brooch, her simple plea, "I have nothing to hide, my lord." He remembered the way her eyes met his, calm and clear, without a hint of deceit. This was not the Anna he knew. His anger did not dissipate, but it shifted, a new fire of cold, calculating resolve. The truth was not in what he saw, but in what he had learned of her heart. He would not accuse her. He would not dishonor her with his doubts. He would find the truth. He turned from the glasshouse and strode into the hall, his face a mask of iron. He found a footman on his way to the kitchen, a young man who looked nervously at the Duke's mud-splattered boots and his grim expression. The Duke's voice, when he spoke, was quiet and dangerously calm. "I have just returned from London. I have an urgent matter to attend to. Did you deliver a message to Mr. Rowan earlier this evening?" The footman's face went pale. He stammered, his eyes darting to and fro.
"Yes, my lord, a note. From Miss Anna."
"And who gave you that note?" The footman looked down, his lips trembling. The Duke knew the boy was not a villain, but a victim of a more cunning mind. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single sovereign.
Tell me who gave you the note, and it is yours. Tell me a lie, and you will find yourself on the road to London by dawn. I am not a cruel man, but I require the truth."
The boy broke. He began to sob, the words tumbling out in a rush of fear and regret. "It was Mrs. Harrow. She gave me the note. She said she'd tell the steward about the theft if I refused. She bade me, my lord, I swear, I never meant harm." The Duke listened, his jaw tightening, every word a confirmation of his deepest fears. It was not Anna who was to blame. It was Mrs. Harrow, a viper he had brought into his home. The next morning, the Duke sent for Mrs. Harrow. She arrived, a picture of false piety and smug satisfaction. She was ready to deliver her carefully crafted lies, to poison the Duke's heart with her whispers of Anna's treachery. But the Duke did not allow her to speak. He simply held up the forged note.
"I have it all, Mrs. Harrow. The boy confessed. I know who planted the brooch and who forged this note."
Mrs. Harrow's face went white. She stammered, her hands trembling, her years of carefully constructed malicious gossip collapsing in a single fatal moment. The Duke did not raise his voice. He simply fired her.
"You have until the morning to pack your bags and be gone. If I see you on this estate again, you will regret it. Your poison will not take root here."
She was dismissed, her venomous stare a last impotent weapon. Later that day, Rowan found the Duke in his study. "I'm sorry, my lord. I should have known it was a trap."
"No, I am the one who is sorry. My jealousy nearly blinded me. I saw you and Anna, and I almost accused her of a falsehood. But I remembered her heart, and I chose to trust it."
He then told Rowan of Mrs. Harrow's betrayal. Rowan, a man of simple honor, nodded in understanding. He saw the Duke's turmoil, and he felt a new respect for his friend. The Duke had chosen trust over suspicion, and in doing so, he had proven himself to be a better man than his title suggested. He was a good man, a truly good man. But Rowan had one more thing to say. He pulled a crumpled newspaper from his pocket.
"My lord, I believe you should see this."
It was a cheap, hastily printed pamphlet, a thing of rumor and innuendo. The headline was a scream of scandal, a whisper made public. The pamphlet was a vile thing, a thin sheet of cheap paper smeared with black ink, its words a screaming testament to the power of rumor. "Market girl kept by a duke." The headline was a poison that seeped into the very soil of the estate. The Duke, a man who had spent his life cultivating a reputation of quiet dignity, was now the subject of vicious gossip, and Anna, in her quiet innocence, was the target of a public she could not comprehend. The dowager aunt, having found her suspicions confirmed, moved through the hall with a look of grim satisfaction. Her whispers, once confined to the drawing room, now felt like a part of a larger, more public judgment. She and Mrs. Harrow had found a new, more powerful weapon: the press. The Duke, for his part, remained a wall of unyielding stone. He did not deny the rumours. To do so would be to dignify them. He simply went on with his life, his head held high, his gaze unwavering. But beneath the surface, a cold, hard resolve was setting. He had dismantled the lies in his home. Now he would dismantle the lies in the public eye. He had his legal team begin work on a response, but he knew the law was slow and words were not enough. He needed to prove, to everyone who doubted him, that his intentions were not what the world believed them to be. The pamphlets spread through the country like a wildfire, their venom reaching every corner of society. Lady Aurelia, having been humiliated at Whitcomb Hall, took great pleasure in feeding the press with her carefully crafted lies. Scornful, mocking. She is no innocent. A pauper princess, yes, but a schemer. She ensnared him. A duke brought low by a market girl. The dowager aunt's friends, too, turned their backs. A silent, disapproving judgment that was a cold dagger to the duke's social standing. He was becoming a pariah in his own world, his reputation crumbling under the weight of the rumours. Anna, meanwhile, was oblivious to the scale of the public shame. She saw the pamphlets, of course, the bold black letters, a frightening reminder of the world she had tried to escape. But she did not understand the intricate web of social judgment and political manoeuvring that was at play. She saw only the hurt in the Duke's eyes, the quiet rage that simmered beneath his calm exterior. She worried for him, not for herself. She wanted to apologize for the trouble she had brought him, but she did not know how. Her brother, Thomas, however, understood. He saw the cold looks from the staff, the thinly veiled whispers of the servants. He saw the pamphlets, and he knew they were lies. He wanted to defend his sister, to protect the man who had shown him such kindness. But he was only a valet, a man of no consequence. He felt a deep, helpless rage. One afternoon, as he was returning from a routine errand, he noticed he was being followed. It was a group of ruffians, their faces grim, their expressions full of menace. They were not from the village. Their clothes were too new, too clean. They were hired thugs sent to send a message. Thomas, a boy who had once traded his dignity for his sister's safety, was now a man who would not back down. He did not run. He turned to face them. The attack was swift and brutal. They did not aim to kill, only to injure. They wanted to send a message, to remind the Duke that he was in a world of wolves. They hit him with a club, a sickening thud that sent a sharp pain through his arm. They kicked him, their words a stream of venom.
Your sister's no saint. She's the Duke's whore. Tell him the world knows now. Tell him he'll pay for his pride.
Thomas fought back with the courage of a man defending his family, his hands a blur of motion. But he was outmatched. They left him on the road, bruised and bleeding, a final warning delivered with a viciousness that left him gasping for air. He stumbled back to the hall, his clothes torn, his face a mess of blood and bruises. The sight of him, so beaten and broken, sent a wave of shock through the staff. The Duke, upon hearing the news, went pale. He found Thomas in the hall, being tended to by a footman. The boy was in pain, but his eyes were clear, and in them the Duke saw his own helpless rage. He knelt beside him, his gaze fixed on a cut on Thomas's cheek, the blood still oozing, a testament to his courage. Thomas's voice broke, low but steady. They took him on the Pemberley Road. The Duke and Anna had now been sharing Whitcomb Hall for 2 years. Over this time, a powerful man had found his position in the world to be of little consequence. He was the master of his estate, the silent hero of a quiet scandal, but in his heart, He was nothing more than a man in love with a woman who saw him as a benefactor, a friend. He had spent 2 years a silent observer, aching for a moment that he could not demand. A man of quiet pride and immense power, he found himself a timid fool in her presence. He would see her in the day, a beautiful figure among the flowers, and an overwhelming urge would seize him, a need to simply speak to her, to be near her. He would walk toward her, a question forming in his mind, but as he drew near, the words would vanish, lost in the sheer force of her quiet grace. He would mumble a quick greeting, his voice rougher than he intended. And then he would turn and walk away, his heart a beating drum of regret. He had lost his words, he had lost his cool. He had lost everything to the quiet power of a girl in a garden. He retreated to his study, unable to face her. He sent for her brother.
Thomas, how is your sister?
She is well, my lord. She is happier now. She has learned to speak for herself. She is not afraid. The Duke's heart sank. She was not afraid of him anymore. She was a woman. That evening, he found her exactly where he knew she would be, in the garden. The sun was a low fire on the horizon, painting the sky in a wash of soft colors, and the air was cool, perfect for a quiet, vulnerable conversation. She was seated on the grass, a small, worn notebook in her lap, her head bowed in concentration. He saw the smudge of soil on her wrist, a testament to a day spent in the earth, and the faint ink stain on her finger, a testament to a mind lost in a world of stories. Her hands, he saw, were not the delicate hands of a lady, but the strong, capable hands of a woman who knew the true names of flowers. He walked to her, his movements slow and deliberate. He did not lose his words this time.
Anna.
She looked up, her quiet eyes meeting his. He felt an overwhelming sense of honesty in them, a pure, unyielding innocence. He felt himself lose his own composure, but he held on.
You love to write. Your stories. I have never asked. Tell me one of those stories.
He did not look at her, but at the notebook in her lap. A silent plea. She smiled, a soft, genuine expression that reached her eyes.
You may sit.
He sat beside her, his body a tight wire of contained emotion, the grass damp beneath him. He was seated on the ground with her, a duke brought low by a girl he had never truly known. He had no words, he simply waited. The air was heavy with the scent of rosemary and mint, a familiar comfort. She began to speak, her voice a soft, tremulous whisper, a tale she had been writing in her heart for weeks.
Once, in a faraway land, a lost stranger stumbled upon a sale of a woman in the marketplace. But it was not a woman, it was someone else. But that stranger was kind enough to find the actual woman and take in the fragile and fearful girl.
She paused, her eyes on the setting sun. The Duke was staring at her now, his face a silent, open book. He saw his own story reflected in her words, his own clumsy pride, his own quiet need. He saw himself as she saw him, a man who had done a strange, kind thing for a girl who had no name. She continued her story, her voice gaining a new confidence.
I think the stranger told the girl he liked her, but the girl never understood. She was not ready. She was too timid and too afraid.
She paused, the words a quiet, poignant weight in the air. He saw the question in her eyes. He saw the truth in her words. He saw that she was not a child, but a woman who had spent 2 years finding her own voice.
So did she like him then?
Anna's breath caught. The question was so direct, so full of a quiet hope that it shook her. Her eyes dropped to the ground, then back up to his, a profound, searching look.
Not like that. At the time, the girl was too timid and too afraid. She couldn't even think of liking him. She was not ready.
Her gaze searched his face, her eyes filled with a new kind of courage.
Is she ready now?
Anna's breath caught. She trembled, her eyes dropping to the ground, then back up to his. She saw the question in his gaze, the sincerity in his eyes, the profound and unyielding patience. He was not asking for a conquest. He was asking for a heart.
She is.
She leaned in, her lips a soft, tender whisper against his, the first touch of a kiss that had been 2 years in the making. It was a kiss of quiet forgiveness, of new trust, of a promise of a future yet to come. It was the moment friendship became love. The kiss was long, soft, and endless. They pulled back, their eyes locked, the world around them a beautiful, silent blur. It was a perfect moment, a fragile, tender thing, sealed by a promise of a future that seemed impossibly bright. The sun was now fully in the sky, a warm, golden promise of a new day.
The magistrate's summons was not a defeat, but a final public battlefield, a chance to set the record straight once and for all. The hearing was held not in a dusty courtroom, but in the Duke's own study, a private affair designed to settle a public dispute with the utmost discretion. The Dowager Aunt had sent a representative in her place, a cold, formal man who regarded Anna with a look of open disdain. The Duke dismantled the accusations with the precision of a master strategist. He had brought his witnesses, not of legal standing, but of moral authority. Thomas stood tall, his gaze fixed on the legal representative, his quiet dignity a formidable weapon. The footman, a boy redeemed by the Duke's mercy, confessed to being bribed, his words a final damning blow to the entire scheme. The magistrate, a man of logic and reason, listened. He heard the Duke's words, his quiet defense of a girl he had taken under his wing, and he saw the profound loyalty of a family that was not bound by blood or title, but by choice. The case was dismissed. The charges were nullified. The Duke had won, and he had done so with honor. Later that afternoon, the Duke found Rowan in the library, a glass of brandy in his hand. The two men stood in a comfortable silence, a friendship forged in the crucible of childhood now strengthened by a shared act of honor. Rowan was the first to speak. She is a remarkable woman.
She is.
The Duke looked at his friend. Rowan smiled, a genuine warm expression that filled his eyes.
I will be leaving in the morning. I came only to see that she would be well. She is your charge now, your prize to win. Rowan departed the next morning, his purpose fulfilled, leaving the Duke and Anna to their quiet peace. The following months were a quiet, beautiful courtship. The Duke's days were now filled not with legal battles, but with walks in the garden, with talks by the fire, with the soft, gentle rhythm of a man and a woman falling in love. He formally introduced her to society, a quiet and firm statement that she was his. Some turned their backs, but many more were swayed by the Duke's quiet dignity and Anna's serene grace. Her past was a whisper, but her present was a statement. The Duke's choice was clear. The wedding was a simple, sincere affair. The vows were quiet and heartfelt, spoken not in a crowded cathedral, but in the small chapel on the Whitcomb grounds. Anna's parents, tearful and proud, watched from the front pew, their hearts filled with a love and gratitude that had found its home. Thomas, now a man of substance and purpose, stood as the Duke's best man, a testament to a brother's courage that had led to an impossible love. The final image was in the garden, at dusk. The Duke and his new Duchess walked in the growing twilight, their hands linked, a silent conversation passing between them. Anna knelt and picked a small rosemary blossom, its scent a reminder of her journey. She tucked it into the lapel of his jacket, her fingers tracing the fabric with a quiet tenderness.
Thank you.
He was not thanking her for the blossom, but for everything.
Thank you for teaching a duke to be patient.
He was looking out at the rose garden, which was a new color, a shade of rose that had only bloomed once before, on a long-ago morning. He turned to her, his heart full. He saw her face, so serene, her eyes so kind. He looked at her and knew that his heart had been home all along. He had found his prize, not in a market, but in a garden.